On this video, I'm going to show you how I got to this stage on the chop of the 51 Mercury. So tag along and see how it goes. Hey, thanks for following along still. So we've got the top off. Obviously, this is a few days later. This is quite a big undertaking for anyone that's done this work, or as you can imagine, it's going to take quite some time to do. So you saw me taking the top off. So now I've got it back, placed down. I didn't video too much of that stuff because it would have been a lot of tedious, measuring and cutting and whatnot. So I've got it to a point now where I started welding things back on. I've got the B-pillar in, I've got my front set. So where I'm at is 1 inch in the front and 3 inches in the rear, which means 2 inches out of the B-pillar. I'll show you that here now. 3 inches out of the back section, laid this window down, so cut all the way around the window to here on either side. Laid the window down. Actually, that's one measurement that I didn't take. It's too bad, I should have taken that. But what it actually, I really only laid it down about 1.5 inches or so. But of course that equates to a lot more up the top. So 3 inches out of here, which also meant that, whenever you chop these, the roof goes forward. So that's what our gap is here. I haven't cut that out. That's just the slice between here and here that made this gap now. When I laid the window down, this is overlapping on top of the window section. And so I had to slice all the way up. You can see all the way up almost, pretty much to the door to get this roof section to go where I wanted, to be able to pull the side out. So then I've cut my little round piece out of the base here because that will have to be shortened up. I'm leaving the pillars straight because I like that look a little bit better. So what I did is just cut out the front section here of our window opening and brought that back, and you can see the gap here. It's just around 3/4 inch or so that I had to slice and move that back because of course the roof goes forward. And the bottom stayed the same. I just welded that back in place. That's all factory, that's all original. All the difference came out of the top in here. And I had cut these on an angle because I wasn't sure if I was going to lay the pillars forward, but it was such a small difference that to me it wasn't worth it to go through all the trouble to lay them forward anymore so that you'd even notice, because it was just such a small difference. So I figured, okay, I'll just leave it, put it back the way that it was factory. So that's 2 inches that was cut out of here. And so we'll just finish welding all that stuff up, and that's how that's going to go. On the front here, basically it was just 1 inch that I took out of both sides. Lined it all up. I did have a little bit of an issue here with my drip rail, and at this stage I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep the drip rail or not. My plan always was to, but one of the things that I'm thinking about is when I go to body work this whole car, how hard is that going to be with the drip rail? And I know it's doable, but anyways, what I will do here to fix this is I'll just cut a section of this drip rail out. I have obviously extra drip rail from shortening things up. So I'll fix that. I'll cut that out, then I'll be able to actually weld that up a little bit better and put it back in, and same over there. So I did also have to slice this part to get the roof to get the pillars to sort of conform to the way that I wanted it to. You can see, I don't know if you can tell, they're a little bit off, so I'll just have to pull that straight. When I go to weld it back together, I'll have to pull this out a little bit when I go to weld those two pieces back up. But that's because I only took 1 inch out of it. That's really the only relief that I did. Everything that I did was just basic and not going overboard. I took my time seeing where things fit. Inside the pillar here, I did put a plate on the inside, so that's what's plug welded here, just for a little bit extra support. And it actually helped me when I was setting the top down to lay it on those plates and hold it in place and sort of figure out the back so I could figure out the back side. I'll take you around the other side and you can see this side is not welded up yet or cut. So I haven't cut the B-pillar out of this part yet. So that I'll finish up doing that side first, and then I'll cut that out and tack that up. I had to cut the lower window piece out to get that in place. So we're getting there. I'm not even going to say slowly, because this is going well. For the time that I'm spending out here working on it, it's going quite well. And then the next steps too will be to do my door frames. Now figure out putting that piece in, and then we'll flip over to the other side. I will also put that small piece in now, I think, as well. Sorry, I won't flip over to the other side until I do the door and get the door cut up. So hopefully we'll get that done. Yeah, thanks for sticking along. Please, I said it before, but please subscribe so you can follow along with this. Let's carry on in the chop. Okay, so I've got the door cut up and tacked in place. So pretty much this side of the car is almost done now. So I had to cut this in a bunch of spots. So cut it off the bottom there to drop it the 1 inch. Put a little slice in. Man, it's windy today. Put a slice in here. lengthen this section of the door. Hopefully that straightens out. Lengthen this section of the door, just put in that little spot there. Put another little slice in there, and that was all to bring this centerpiece up. And then this part, cut it down here. So cut the 2 inches off of here. So again, it's 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. And because this is all, if I stand back, you can kind of see how it's sloped back. The whole roof is sloping back, and that's what I wanted. I wanted kind of a fast back, sort of sloped look. So that's what we got going on there. So I've got one little piece to put in behind the door. So I got this one little piece here to put in, and then we're going to move on to the other side and get it all tacked up. I made my own transition here. I originally had that original piece tacked in there, and between myself not liking it and a couple buddies said, "Why are you doing that?" So I remade that piece so it looks a little bit nicer transition. So then I'll just cut this all out nice and straight, put a piece in there, and then put a filler piece up to go up in the roof there. But that's pretty much it for this side, other than that little piece, and then we're going to move over to the other side. So, yeah. So I've got most of my cuts in the front welded up. I've noticed I forgot one just right up here that I have to fill in. None of this is ground down yet. I'm just going to wait and sort of do a rampage of grinding when I'm done. So now the task is I want to get this main roof panel welded in. Then I'll make this other little patch for this side, and then make these filler pieces. So what I'm going to do is cut along, and I'll show you in a second, but I'm going to cut along as I go and tack, hopefully as I go, so that it stays in the shape that I want. And I'm using these, so up here it's Canadian Tire, local hardware store. I'm using these, so they're a really thin wheel, cut-off wheel, and 0.35 is the size, so it should be all right, and cut a nice small gap, and maybe I'll be able to TIG weld most of it, but we'll find out. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'll just show you sort of the arch of the roof. I'll just show you what I'm doing here. I started by just tacking a little bit. We've got it clamped in place. It's pushed in the right arc that I want. So I'm just going to slice along here and just do a couple tacks with the MIG welder, and then maybe be able to go back in and TIG weld it. But the big thing too, you know, I wanted to make this slope in the roof right. So that looks, I mean, I've got it pretty perfect. I spent a lot of time sort of pushing and shoving and clamping and trying to get it all in the right spot there. So I think we're pretty good. Okay, so I've TIG welded that piece, as you saw, across the roof there. And I mean, full disclosure here, right? Like, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know what happened. But if you see this side of the roof's not bad, not too much of a dip in here. But the driver's side, you can almost see it as I start walking over there. Man, did it dip. It was actually doing that before I welded it. And I don't know why, because I had everything done the same, and this really sort of warped up and buckled. But I'm thinking what I can do anyways is I can hammer this out and get that up and a bit flatter. But yeah, honestly, I'm kind of bummed about that. Kind of bummed that happened, but it was kind of one of those things where, okay, well, might as well just keep going. And yeah, I had this propped up and I had it pushed up, and anyways, it didn't seem to make a difference. So there's where we're at. So now I've got to, I've actually got a gap that happened here too in this, with this window with this. So now I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I'm hoping that if I pop this out, that gap's gonna close up, because it should push this back in again. Because it's not really doing it that much on the other side than it is on this side. My alternative is I can push the bottom up to get this to close back up again, but yeah, it's kind of a bummer. Anyways, we'll push through, and yeah, I think what I'm going to try and do is try and get some of this dent out somehow. See if I can hammer this up or something and see what I can do to try and get that out. But anyways, the weld turned out all right. I was happy about that. It was pretty tough on my shoulder, but other than that, it seemed to work out all right. I don't know what, not quite sure what happened there. You can see where it almost looks like there was no gas or something, but that wasn't the case. I don't know what happened there, but anyways, it just wipes off. So let me carry on and hopefully try and pop that dent out. All right, so I got a bit of a too much stretch in the middle here, and maybe you can see the discoloration. So I've been heating this up and shrinking it, and it's pretty cool. I wish I had the camera on a second ago, because this whole piece just sort of went bloop and came back up, and literally popped. So hopefully you can hear me all right. I don't have my mic hooked up, unfortunately. So I'm just gonna try and what I'm doing is I'm shrinking this. So we're heating it with the torch and then blowing it with the air to cool it off, and trying to get these parts that are shrunk too much, because it was just stretched too far. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit more in this area, and hopefully you guys can see that. I'm just using a very, very small tip on my torch. It's actually even hard to, I don't know, keep it lit on this torch, but I'm just using a very, very small welding tip on my torch to do this, and my blowgun. So let's show you some more of this. Tip may even be a little bit dirty, maybe that's why it's giving me a hard time, but anyway, let's show you this here. Guess it also. So let's show you a bit of this here. So I'm just getting it nice and red. Hopefully you can hear me over the wind outside. It's really windy. And I'll just cool this off. It's pretty neat. I can see it lifting as I'm cooling it. I'm probably doing this totally wrong too. I mean, I have no idea what I'm doing. So now I'm just trying to get this back window right. I had this tacked in along the bottom here. And what was actually happening when I welded the roof up, it ended up just sort of moving this window frame, the window trim away, the rubber. So there was a bit of a gap in there, and I was trying to fight it to get it back to get rid of that gap. And anyway, so I was just sort of left that alone for a little bit and then decided, why don't I just cut the tacks that I had at the bottom of the window, and it just poof, sort of fell right into place. So it just sort of fell out a block of wood, but that's okay because now I can show you. Down here, I just got a little block of wood to push the bottom of the window up so that along this edge here I can get it flush, and then I can tack it again. I'll clean this sort of metal up here, but I was just testing that out just to see what it's like, so I'll show you now. So what was happening is I was getting a gap up here in the window seal. So when I cut these tacks out, the window flopped down, and then that sealed back up, and I felt great about it all over again. So all I have to do is just, if you can see in here, I got quite a big gap, and it's dropped down a little bit low, so I won't be able to get that seal in. So I'd either have to cut this body away, but I can just lift the bottom of the window up with those, basically those chunks of wood, and I will tack this into place, and then it will all line up perfectly. When I push those up in there, I can show you on the other side, and then there's no gap. So I've got this side pushed up with the chunk of wood, and you can see it's nice and flush. So I can go ahead and weld this. I'll get the other side pushed up, of course, first. And I'll trim this part up, or back, I guess I should say. I'll trim this part back, and then we'll get the bottom of the window tacked in, and I should be able to go around and weld that whole thing, weld the whole bottom of the window up. But now at least my window seal is nice and flush again. So I made my own planishing hammer and was planishing this out just a little bit just to get the shape back into it and get the welds knocked down a little bit. But part 3 will be finishing that off and finishing off the rest of this metal work that needs to be done. And we'll see how long that takes, whether the part 3 also includes doing all of the window trim, or at least some of it. But we'll see how long that takes just to get that part done. And I don't want these videos to be too long for you, but this one was a pretty long one because this is a big chunk of the work. Now the next big chunk of work, of course, comes making all of the window trim and the garnish moldings and all that stuff that anybody that's ever chopped one of these or watched it knows that can be pretty tedious. So I will have to massage the sides a little bit to get them into sort of place a little bit closer, get them in a little bit closer. I don't want to pull the window out and distort the window too much. So I'd rather just, because when I do that, it starts to push on there. So what I want to try and do is I'll try to get this body piece, I'll try and hammer it in. So I'll come around and start from basically the back. I'll put a couple tacks in here, but I'll start from the back and weld it around. And hopefully when I get around here, I will have built, I left a little chunk. I'll have built up enough heat that when I get to this part here, I can tack that nicely. Now I'm not worried too much about burning this old seal because I have a new rear window rubber anyways, so I'm not too concerned about that. So I'll just trim this back a little bit so I can weld in this area a little bit better. But that's what we're going to do now. Well, this is going to be it for part 2 of the chop on our 51 Mercury. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can follow along with this. Part 3 will be doing the rest of this metal finishing. I've got the back of the window welded up here, but the part 3 will be finishing all this stuff off, and maybe, depending on how that goes, we'll probably get into doing all the garnish moldings and all that kind of stuff the window moldings on the inside. So stick around for part 3. Smash that like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much, and take care.